Hello everyone, it's Charlene. I'm going to be coloring today and giving you lots of tips and tricks along the way. I have here the new Nutcracker Kisses stamps and dies from Pink and Maine. There are these really cute nutcrackers. I'm going to be showing you how to color them and give them beautiful 3D results. So let's get started. Anytime you color, you want to work with a nice coloring paper. I'm using the new Olo Premium Marker Blending Card. I've been using this off camera for a while and I really like it. It's super smooth and pretty reasonable in price. So I definitely recommend checking this out if you need any kind of alcohol marker coloring paper. There are 4 different nutcrackers in this set. You can see these 2 nutcrackers have their arms out to the side so they can hold little items that you can separately stamp and color. So keep that in mind when you're choosing which ones you want to stamp. I want to have 3 nutcrackers on the front of my card, so I'm going to pick the 2 with their hands out, and then I will pick this guy here for the center. I'm probably going to stamp a few more of these items out later, but I want to start with my nutcrackers and get coloring. I'm using alcohol marker friendly ink, so I'll be sure to ink up my stamps thoroughly so that way I get some nice crisp stamped results. Flip and press and lift. I'm going to double stamp here just to build up those black lines and make sure I have a really solid, nice black color. So flip, press, lift, and these look great. For coloring, I'm going with a Christmas traditional color palette. I have R 1.8, 1.7, and 1.5, and then I'll use blues and greens for the other 2 nutcrackers. So starting here with the 1.8, I'm going to come along the left hand side of the hat here and flick out about 1/8 of an inch towards the center of the hat. I'm going to do this on both sides, so here I'm coming in from the right hand side as well. Then bringing in the 1.7, I'm going to slightly overlap the 1.8 and bring it out about 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, pulling that dark ink in towards the center. I'm making sure here as well that the line where I end is pretty even where the end of my alcohol marker is coming to. That's going to help with the final look. Finish the left side. I'm going to do the same exact thing here on the right hand side. I'll bring in the 1.5, doing that same thing where I'm going to overlap just slightly the 1.7 and bringing it in towards the center. I'm not going to take it all the way towards the center. I'm going to leave a tiny little gap at the center, which is going to be our highlight. So this is where the light would be reflecting off of our nutcracker, and I'm going to keep that in the center on all of them. I've brought it all the way. I'm going to repeat the process now with all 3 colors, and what that's going to do is it's going to build up the color, make it more bold, and it's also going to help the colors to blend together. Now, if you're running short on time, you only need to do it once. So I've done the second round of 1.7, now the 1.5, and I'm leaving a small amount of that white uncolored highlight there. It looks really nice, I feel like, with that highlight. Keeping that same color theme for the rest of this nutcracker, I'm going to color in his top, starting with the 1.8, again bringing in a small amount on the left side and then repeating that on the right side. Now I've got the 1.7 and then finally the 1.5, again leaving a small spot in the center for a highlight. I did also bring the 1.7 slightly underneath the chin, so that way we've got some shading there. Repeating now with all 3 colors, and this will lighten a little bit as it dries. So I'm going to let that dry for the arms. I'm going to bring a very tiny amount of 1.8 along where the inset of the arm is, touching the body on each side and also the underside of the arm. If these were larger stamped images, I would also do it on the top side of the arm. But because I'm working with a small space, I want to have room for the shadow and then for the lighter color. I brought a small line of 1.7, blending out that 1.8, and now I have my 1.5 colored in the rest there. I'm going to do it again to build up the color and help everything blend. Then I'll move on to my boots. I have some CG9 and I'm going to use that with CG7. That CG9 is almost black. I'm going to bring it in a very small amount on each side of the two boots. Then I'll bring in the CG7, slightly overlapping and going towards the center, leaving a tiny spot of white towards the middle for the highlight on the boots. This can be kind of tricky to do, so definitely take your time when you're in a small space like that. Repeat that a second time. For the accents on all of our nutcrackers, I'm going to be coloring golds. Now, yellow oranges work really well to create a gold. I've got a dark yellow orange, which is 2.7. I'm going to bring it in on each side of these shiny buttons, I guess you would call them. And then I'll bring in yellow orange 2.3, which is quite a bit lighter. But because I'm only working with the two colors, I want to make sure I get a nice highlight in those small spaces. Doing the same thing here for the tops of the shoulders. Got the 2.7, bringing a small amount in from each side, and then just dabbing essentially in the center with the 2.3 to help those have that nice highlight. I'm also going to do this on the cuffs of the jacket with the same two colors, the 2.7 on both sides, and then the 2.3 right in the center. This is a really tiny little spot. So, in those small areas, just do the best you can. If you only want to use one color, nobody's going to fault you for that, right? I'm going to repeat that to help build up the color and also make that highlight a little bit more noticeable in the center. For the face of the nutcracker, I have some O's. I've got O 4.6. I'm starting here by flicking out a tiny little bit from each side of the face. Not very much at all. This is going to be the darkest shadow along our nutcracker. Then I'm bringing a thin line underneath the hairline and going over here on the other side. I'm also adding some on each side of that hinged jaw that the nutcracker has. Then I'll bring in 4.3 and I'm going to run my brush right along the edge of that 4.6 to help blend it out. And then I'll bring in my 4.1, coloring in most of the remainder of the face. I'm going to leave a very small area open in the middle that I don't color because it would be lighter, because that's where the light is hitting on our rounded face of our nutcracker. Doing that again a second time, and then I will lastly come in here with 4.0 and just color that center area. For the chin area that pops down, I'm going to bring the 4.3 underneath the mustache and along the bottom of the chin. I'm not going to do anything on the sides there. I will now bring in 4.1 and blend out my 4.3. I'm going to leave a tiny little bitty spot there in the center, and I'll again color that with 4.0 like I did with the face. So now we have a much lighter area towards the center of the face, and everything's kind of darker out towards the edges. For the hands, they are very tiny, so I'm just working with 4.3 on each side and bringing in 4.1 in the center, just kind of dabbing it in there to help blend that 4.3 out, and I'll repeat that. For the cheeks, we're going to go fairly light. You could definitely go more rosy, but I wanted to keep it light. So I have some R0.2. I'm only bringing it in from the left side of the cheek, and then on the other side from the right side of the cheek. That's because this face is rounded, remember? So when you're working with rounded things, you really want your shading to be on those outside edges. So I brought the 0.1 in, blended that out, and then repeated again to help build up the color. Next, I'm going to do the same thing for the nose. The nose, I imagine, is actually raised off of the face. So I'm going to bring the 0.2 on each side, and then I'll put the 0.1 right in the center. This is a really nice pink combo to use for cheeks. You also, like I said, could go a little bit more rosy. Keeping with the traditional kind of look of a nutcracker, I'm just going to be lightly shading with some warm grays to help make the pants as well as all of the hair look 3D. So I've brought in WG3, bringing a really tiny line all the way around the head, and then also I'll be going underneath the hat, and then I did the outer edges as well as the inner edges of the legs. Now I'll bring in WG1 and very small little flicks to pull that out towards the center of the legs. Now I end up not using the WG0 that you see there on the screen because I didn't want to make this area too dark. If you don't care for your whites to be so dark, you could certainly start with WG1 here and pull it out with WG0. I personally like a darker white. I feel like it's a little more moody. I don't know. Everybody has their preferences, right? So you can always lighten up on the colors if these are too dark for your taste, but you'll still get that nice shading. So now I'm doing underneath the hat. I did the same thing, WG3, and then pulling it out lightly with the WG1. And for the mustache, I'm going to turn this upside down here so you can kind of see a little better. I'm going to bring a very small amount of the WG3 just under the underside of the mustache, and I chose to do this just because it's a small space. If it was larger, I might have brought some along the top as well. But now I'll bring the WG1 and run it over just so lightly and help blend that up and out into the mustache. For our second nutcracker, I'm moving on to blues. So I have B0.7, B0.6, and B0.5. Now, largely all the coloring I do here is very similar to what I did on the first nutcracker. So I'm not going to show you all of it. I've done the hat, I've done the body. Now I have finished up with the boots. I grabbed the wrong cool grays. I have CG7 and CG5, but you know what? Not a big deal. I colored over with the 9 and 7. Can't even tell. I did the same thing. I don't know what I was thinking here with my yellow oranges. Realized it after I started coloring and brought in the 2.7 and 2.3. So sometimes it's easier to remember what you did if you color all of that color at once. So like if you colored all of your golds at once, all of your reds at once, then you don't have to remember which shades that you used when you're working with a lot of different markers. I'm coloring the brim of the hat a little different from how I colored the top part of the hat. I brought in a tiny bit of 0.7 from each of those corner edges, and then I brought in the 0.6, pulled it out, and also brought some 0.6 underneath that top band. And now bringing in the lightest, the 0.5, and I'm going to bring that almost all the way to the center, but just leaving that tiny bit of white for the highlight so that it matches in the same line going right down the center. I'm going to color the two faces of the nutcracker here in the exact same way that I did the first one. So those are finished now. And now I'm going to just add a few more gold accents here and there. Next, I'm going to bring in the warm grays again, the WG3 and WG1. So I'll start with the pants. I did those, and then I did all of the hair, the mustache, as well as on the sides of the pants. He had some stripes. I did that in the warm grays as well. For the third nutcracker, I'm bringing in greens. I've got G1.8, 1.7, and 1.5, starting with the jacket, same way that I did the other two. Then I'm going to do the top portion of the hat, and that bottom portion I'm actually going to do in gold. So I'll bring in the YO 2.7, but I'm also going to bring in 2.5 and 2.3. And that's because I'm working with a much larger space. So when you're picking out the markers you want to use, keep in mind the size of the space that you're going to have to color. The larger the space, the more colors you can use to help transition things. So I started with the 2.7, brought it in from the sides on both parts of the crown, and then also did a line along the top rim of the crown. bringing 2.5 in, slightly overlapping and pulling again that color in towards the center. This is what helps blend and also helps give that 3D look to our finished product. Lastly, I will bring in the 2.3 and I will run this along the rim and then pull it out towards the center, leaving a tiny white space again that is going to match with the small white space that I did on the green part of his hat as well. I'm going to repeat that to build up the color. If you're low on time, again, you don't have to double color things. You can just color them one time. But if you have the time, it really does create a nice look and helps things to blend really nicely. So while I was there, I did the remainder of the gold accents, his belt, his cuffs, his shoulder pieces, and then I did my warm grays again. Lastly, I'm doing the boots with the CG9 and CG7. So here's our 3 finished nutcrackers. I think they are so super cute. I'm going to cut these out with the coordinating dies. So I'll go ahead and place those dies and hold them in place with low tack tape and cut them out. There's our sweet little nutcrackers, and off camera I went ahead and colored some of the different accessories, so that's going to help us to create our scene. Don't be afraid to color more than you need. I find that if I don't use all the pieces, I can always kind of stick them inside as a cute little accent. I have a piece of white cardstock cut to 5 1/4 inches by 4 inches, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment directly onto this piece of cardstock. That's because I know I want to create my scene on the horizontal and have it be a line going over the sentiment. I'm using Christmas Wishes and Nutcracker Kisses from the same stamp set and stamping towards the bottom center with the same black ink that I was using. This also would look really nice if you heat embossed it, maybe with some black or gold embossing powder or silver. It would give it a nice little bit of added shine if you wanted to do that. So I'll flip and press a second time and lift. That looks great. For a nice border, I have an A2 sized piece of pattern paper. This is from the Kraft Christmas paper pad. Lots of fun, different Christmas designs in here for your holiday cards. I'll add glue to the back of our stamped panel with the sentiment and then adhere it to the center of the pattern paper. So that gives us a nice 1/8 inch border going all the way around. If you were working with less pieces, you could certainly increase that border size. I just have a lot of lovely colored die cut images, so I want to make sure I have room to put them all on there. I've got foam squares on the backs of my nutcrackers, and I'm going to decide where I want all of the little accessories before I determine if I need foam tape on them and before I put anything down. So I want the candy cane on the right. I think I want the swirly candy here on the left to kind of help balance everything. And then the gingerbread and the present I'm going to put in between the nutcrackers, keeping everything balanced, right? So the gingerbread is balancing the present, the candy cane is balancing our candy stick over there on the left. Now, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with the heart, and then I realized it would be really nice on the left side because it would help balance out the red that's on the candy cane because it goes all the way up and down on that candy cane. So I'm creating a nice horizon line here right over the top of the sentiment. You could add shading with an alcohol marker if you wanted to. I didn't feel like it needed it, so I skipped that on this. I moved the gingerbread as well as the present over and out on each side just slightly, so that way we can still see the entire center nutcracker. I feel like that balanced everything a little bit better. I'm using my glass mat to help line things up so I can see my center line there. I want that to match up with the center of the boots, and then the point at the top of his hat would match up with the line that goes all the way through the center. Now I'm going to use the placement there of my center nutcracker to really help me figure out where to place everything else. But first I'm going to adhere my candy cane. I've added a little bit of foam tape on the back to help support it once we put it down, but I'm going to glue it to the back of the hand, and that's because I don't want to lose all of that hand detail. So I'll place that down here about 1/4 inch out from the center nutcracker, but I want to keep the candy cane on the card panel. So now gluing our candy stick, I don't know what you would call that, swirly candy. I'm going to glue it here, but I want to bring the candy portion in front of the head so we can see all of the candy, but I'm going to glue the stick portion back behind his hand because I don't want to lose the hand either. So once I have that in place, I added some foam squares to help support everything, took off the release tape, and you'll see here I am actually measuring based on where their heads are and not where the hair is, because I want these to be balanced on each side of the card. If I went a full 1/4 inch from where the hair is, then things would be unbalanced. So pay attention to the shape of your images when you're laying things out so that you can make sure everything feels balanced visually, that everything's weighted well on each side of your card. Added some foam tape to the back side of my gingerbread, and then I'm going to add some glue on the back. I'm doing the same thing here with the present. I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape on the back and then adding that glue, because the glue is actually going to adhere to the nutcracker, but the foam tape is going to help support it on the other side so that if I mail this, it's going to all stay nice and popped up and secure and not get bent in the mail. We don't want that to happen. Lastly, I'll add half of a foam square to the back of the heart and angle the heart so that it matches the other two items here on the left and the right hand side, so that's visually cohesive. There is some really beautiful confetti with this release, Christmas red and Christmas green, but I ultimately decided on this card to use some glitter glue instead. Before I do that though, I want to adhere my entire panel to the card base, so I'll add some glue on the back here and then adhere it to the base. Now that's so that way when I'm done, I can just set it aside and let that glitter glue dry. So I'm bringing in a small amount of glitter glue here and there. Keep a piece of scrap cardstock there to help you out on the side as well. I didn't really have any rhyme or reason to where I put the glitter glue, just where it made me happy. And then once it was dry, I set it aside. So here is the finished card. It looks so cute with that little bit of sparkle in all of the different images. I absolutely love how the nutcrackers turned out on this card. I stamped a sentiment on the inside as well from the same set. I hope all of you picked up some tips and tricks today. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell so that I can continue to bring you more crafty content in the future. Until next time, happy crafting.